The brass doorknob wouldn't turn. I tried my key again, thinking maybe I'd grabbed the wrong one in my rush this morning. Nothing. The familiar worn metal that had opened this door every day for 3 years now felt foreign in my hand, useless as a toy. Mrs. Chen, I called through the door, knowing she was home. Her Mercedes sat in the guest spot, gleaming like a predator in the afternoon sun. The door seems to be stuck. Footsteps approached from inside, deliberate, unhurried, the click of designer heels on marble, then her voice, dripping with satisfaction. It's not stuck, Priya. I've had the locks changed. My laptop bag slipped from my shoulder. 12 hours of meetings, presentations, and corporate politics, and now this. Excuse me? The door opened just enough for me to see her face, perfectly made up as always, lips curved in that smile that never reached her eyes. Behind her, I could see my home, our home, the place where Daniel and I had built 3 years of memories. You heard me, she said, examining her manicured nails. Someone like you doesn't belong in my son's life. I tried to be patient, but enough is enough. Someone like me. The words hit with familiar precision. The girl from the wrong side of Boston. The scholarship student who dared to marry her precious son. The nobody who'd somehow tricked Daniel into love. This is my home, I said quietly. You can't just dash. Can't I? She laughed. The sound like breaking champagne flutes. Check the lease, dear. Only Daniel's name is on it. And as his mother, I'm simply protecting his interests while he's away. Daniel, in Singapore for 2 weeks on business, unreachable for another 6 hours due to time zones. She'd planned this perfectly. My belongings are in storage. She waved a hand dismissively. I've had everything relocated. You'll receive the details once you accept reality and stop embarrassing yourself. Through the gap in the door, I spotted our wedding photo face down on the console table. The ceramic bowl I'd made in pottery class, a misshapen thing Daniel insisted on displaying, was gone, erased, like I'd never existed here at all. Mrs. Chen, I kept my voice steady, professional, the same tone I used in boardrooms when men twice my age tried to intimidate me. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. With what proof? Your name isn't on anything. Daniel pays the rent from his account. You're just, she pursed her lips, a long-term guest who's overstayed her welcome. She wasn't wrong. We'd meant to add my name to the lease, but somehow never got around to it. Daniel handled the rent because his consulting business paid monthly while my salary came bi-weekly. Small conveniences that now felt like calculated traps. Where am I supposed to go? The question escaped before I could stop it. Weak, pathetic, exactly what she wanted to hear. I've made a reservation at the Marriott downtown. 1 week, prepaid. That should give you enough time to make arrangements. She started closing the door. Perhaps that little studio apartment you came from? I'm sure they'd take you back. The door clicked shut. The deadbolt turned with finality. I stood there for a moment, staring at the brass numbers 4B that had meant home for 3 years. Then I walked calmly to the elevator, rode down 4 floors, and exited onto Commonwealth Avenue. The October air bit through my blazer as I pulled out my phone, not to call the police, not to leave a frantic voicemail for Daniel. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts to a name that would change everything: Robert Hayworth, my property manager. Priya, his voice boomed through the speaker. How's my favorite landlord? Still keeping that identity under wraps? Actually, Rob, I said, watching Mrs. Chen's Mercedes through the lobby windows. I think it's time we discussed the tenant in 4B. Silence. Then, the Chen rental? Is there a problem? You could say that. Meet me at the Starbucks on Newberry in 20 minutes. Bring the lease agreements and ownership documents. All of them? I smiled for the first time since finding the changed locks. All of them. The story I'd never told Daniel's mother, never told anyone except Daniel himself, was simple. I'd bought the building 2 years before meeting her son. A foreclosure property in Back Bay that everyone said was too ambitious for a 26-year-old financial analyst, but I'd seen potential where others saw problems. 12 units, 3 floors of retail, 1 careful renovation financed through creative leveraging and an obsessive attention to detail. By the time Daniel Chen walked into my life at a charity gala, I was Priya Patel, quiet landlord of one of Commonwealth Avenue's most desirable small buildings. I'd kept it private for good reasons. The looks I got when people discovered my success, the sudden friends who appeared with investment opportunities, the men who went from dismissive to desperate in the span of a conversation. Daniel had fallen for me thinking I was just another young professional trying to make it in Boston. I'd planned to tell him after our wedding, but then his mother arrived for the ceremony and made it clear exactly what she thought of her son marrying beneath his station. so I'd stayed quiet. Let her believe I was the gold digger she'd cast me as. Even convinced Daniel to keep our finances separate. To handle the rent himself, anything to maintain the fiction that protected our relationship from becoming another transaction. Now, sitting across from Rob in a crowded Starbucks, I spread the documents between us like tarot cards revealing the future. She changed the locks, I explained, showing him photos I'd taken, moved my belongings to storage, says I have no legal right to be there. Rob's face went through several shades of red. What? But you own the entire building. Their lease specifically states that any modifications to the property require landlord approval, that harassment of other tenants, including domestic partners, is grounds for immediate eviction, that the landlord maintains right of entry with proper notice. Priya, he leaned forward, you could have her out in 30 days, less if we push the harassment angle. I don't want to wait 30 days. I pulled up my phone, showing him a message. Daniel's in Singapore. His last text said his mother was checking on things while he was gone. He has no idea what she's doing. So we call him Dash. No, I shook my head. This is between Mrs. Chan and me. She wants to play property games? Let's play. Rob grinned. I love it when you get that look. What do you need? Eviction notice. Today. Hand delivered while I'm there to watch. And Rob? I smiled sweetly. Make sure it includes the clause about illegal subletting. Subletting? She mentioned making a hotel reservation for me, 1 week, prepaid, if she's determining who can stay in the apartment and making alternative arrangements. That sounds like unauthorized property management to me. Brilliant. He was already pulling out his laptop. Give me an hour. This is going to be beautiful. While Rob worked his legal magic, I made my own calls, first to the storage company, confirming they had my belongings and arranging immediate retrieval, then to my lawyer, just in case things escalated. Finally to my assistant, clearing my schedule for the next day. I had a feeling I'd need it. By 5 o'clock, we were ready. Rob and I stood outside the building I'd poured my dreams into, watching the sun gild the brick facade. Mrs. Chen's Mercedes still occupied the guest spot, my guest spot, technically. You sure about this? Rob asked. Once she knows you own the building, there's no going back. She locked me out of my own home, I said simply, called me unworthy. Made me feel small for the crime of loving her son. You know what? I'm done being small. We entered through the main door, my building, my codes, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. I could hear her inside 4B, talking on the phone in Mandarin. From the tone, she was complaining about someone. 3 guesses who? Rob knocked firmly. Professional, official. Who is it? Her voice carried irritation at being interrupted. Building management, Mrs. Chen. We need to speak with you about a lease violation. The door opened fully this time. She stood there in cream cashmere in confusion, looking between Rob and me. What are you doing here? She demanded. I told you Dash. Ma'am, Rob interrupted smoothly, handing her the envelope. This is an official notice of eviction for violations of your lease agreement, including but not limited to, unauthorized changes to the property, harassment of a domestic partner, and attempted illegal subletting. She laughed, actually laughed. This is ridiculous. You can't evict me. I'll call the landlord Dash. You're looking at her, I said quietly. The silence stretched like spilled honey. Mrs. Chen's face went through a remarkable journey, confusion to disbelief to something approaching fear. That's impossible. You're nobody. A scholarship student who grew up in Roxbury. You work at a mid-level firm making maybe 70,000 Dash. Actually, I left that firm 2 years ago to manage my properties full-time. I stepped past her into my apartment in my building. That nobody from Roxbury bought this building before I ever met your son. That scholarship student invested every penny into something worthwhile, instead of wasting it trying to impress people who'd never accept her anyway. I walked to the mantel where our wedding photo lay face down, set it upright. Daniel knows, of course, loves that I'm successful, loves that I did it myself, but you were so busy seeing what you wanted to see that you never asked the right questions. This is a trick, she whispered. You're lying Dash. Rob? I nodded to my property manager. Would you mind showing Mrs. Chen the ownership documents? I think she needs to see them. While Rob spread papers on my dining table, the one she'd always criticized for being too modern, I retrieved my phone and finally called Daniel. It was 5:30 a.m. in Singapore, but he answered on the second ring. Babe, is everything okay? Mom said she was checking on the apartment Dash. Daniel, I said calmly, putting him on speaker. Your mother changed the locks and tried to evict me from our home. She what? She's here now. We're serving her with eviction papers. Eviction? But she doesn't have any authority. He stopped. I could hear the moment understanding dawned. Oh God, the building. You own the building. Every brick, I confirmed. His mother snatched the phone. Daniel, she's lying. This woman has fooled you. Mom. His voice cut through her hysteria like ice. I've seen the deeds. I've been to the property management meetings. I know exactly who owns that building and exactly how hard she worked for it. What I don't know is why you thought you had the right to lock my wife out of her own property. Your wife? She turned to me, eyes wide. But you aren't married. I would know. I pulled out my wallet, extracting the marriage certificate we'd kept private for 6 months. Vegas, 2 witnesses and Elvis. We were going to have a proper ceremony when you learned to accept me. Guess that's not happening now. She sank onto the couch, my couch, the one I'd reupholstered myself, looking every minute of her 60 years. You can't do this. I'm his mother. And I'm his wife, his partner, the woman he chose. I sat across from her, suddenly exhausted. Do you know why I never told you about the building? Never corrected your assumptions about my success? She didn't answer, but her hands trembled in her lap. Because I wanted you to like me for me, not my money or my property or my success, just me, the woman who loves your son, who makes him laugh, who holds him when his anxiety gets bad and reminds him to take breaks when he's overworking. But you're not. She stopped, maybe finally hearing how it sounded. Not what? Not Chinese? Not from the right family? Not the daughter-in-law you dreamed of? I shook my head. No, I'm not, but I'm the one he chose. And you know what? I'm done apologizing for it. Rob cleared his throat. The eviction notice gives you 30 days, Mrs. Chen. Given the circumstances, I'd suggest you start looking for alternative arrangements immediately. She stood on shaky legs, gathering her purse with as much dignity as she could manage. At the door, she turned back. Does Daniel know what kind of person you really are? Vindictive, cruel, protective, I corrected, of my home, my marriage, and my life. You called me unworthy? Fine. But you don't get to lock me out of my own building and expect no consequences. I'll contest this. I'll hire lawyers. With what grounds? You violated multiple lease terms. It's all documented. I held up my phone, showing the recording app, including this conversation. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, but you were informed this was building management business. She left without another word. Rob helped me change the locks back legally, with proper documentation. By the time we finished, my belongings had been delivered from storage, haphazardly packed in boxes labeled with my maiden name. You okay? Rob asked as we surveyed the mess. I will be. I picked up the ceramic bowl, ugly and beloved, once I put my home back together. Daniel called again as Rob left. I'm on the next flight home. Priya, I'm so sorry. I never thought she'd Stay, I interrupted. Finish your meetings. We'll deal with this when you're back. But she's my mother, my responsibility. No, she's a grown woman who made choices, bad ones. I curled up on the couch, suddenly bone-tired. I'm done protecting her from consequences, done making myself smaller so she feels bigger. I love you, he said simply, the brilliant, successful, fierce woman who bought a building at 26 and married me in a Vegas chapel with Elvis officiating. Blue suede shoes Elvis or gold lame Elvis? Gold lame, obviously, we have standards. I laughed, feeling something unwind in my chest. I love you too, even if your mother thinks I'm a gold digger. Technically, wouldn't I be the gold digger? You own an entire building. I just have a consulting firm and excellent hair. Excellent hair is important, I agreed. We talked until Singapore pulled him back to meetings. I spent the evening unpacking, reclaiming my space box by box. The marriage certificate went on the mantle, prominent and proud. No more hiding, no more making myself palatable for people who'd already decided I wasn't enough. At midnight, a text from an unknown number. You won. Congratulations. I hope you're happy. I looked around my apartment, our apartment, in my building, in the life I'd built with my own hands and dreams. Happy didn't begin to cover it. I texted back, I'm not trying to win anything, Mrs. Chen. I just want to live my life with your son. You're welcome to be part of that life, but only if you can respect both of us. She didn't reply, but a week later, when Daniel returned from Singapore, he brought a letter from his mother, an apology, stilted and formal, but real, a request to start over, to try again. What do you think? He asked, watching me read. I thought about locked doors and cruel words, about assumptions and judgments and years of feeling not quite good enough. Then I thought about second chances and the possibility that people could grow. I said slowly, she can start by applying for a new lease, market rate, with a clear understanding that harassment will not be tolerated. You're giving her another chance? I'm giving us all another chance, but this time, no hiding, no pretending, she deals with who I really am, or she doesn't, her choice. He kissed me then, in our home that was finally, fully ours. Have I mentioned you're brilliant? The building ownership might have been a clue. That too, but I was thinking more about your heart, big enough to give second chances, even when they're not deserved. Mrs. Chen moved back in 2 months later, different unit 2A, with a view of the courtyard instead of the street. She paid her rent on time, kept her opinions mostly to herself, and slowly, carefully, began to see me as more than the sum of her prejudices. The building had taught me patience. After all, some structures needed complete renovation, others just needed time and the right conditions to reveal their true potential. Even mothers-in-law,